With the 2024 season in the books and a first-round exit for the San Diego Bison this past season, we look towards this offseason to see if we can retool, revamp the team, and see if we can make another postseason next season. Now, just to look back on the season, we actually had a lot to be proud of because looking at this team, aside from the fact that Frank Forbes in his rookie season only threw for 2,200 yards and had a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio at 16-16, we still did a lot of good stuff in the running game and also on defense. Mayberry had almost 2,500 yards and almost 20 touchdowns as well. Did fumble the ball twice, but we're going to look past that. And even Sweat, who only got 70 carries that whole season, ended up averaging 7.2 and ended up having 501 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns. Now, Nixon was our fullback, but he did end up getting 40 yards as well as 1 touchdown as well. And of course, Forbes with 37 yards too. Some of those were knees, but also scrambled for a little bit as well. Ernest Gary did end up getting 8 yards on 2 carries, so again, he deserves a little bit of credit as well, because we'll definitely see him over here in the receivers as well, because looking at this whole squad, dude, Tremaine Jefferson was our lead receiver this year with 739 yards. And I know that doesn't seem great, but honestly, with a quarterback that only threw for 2,200 yards, it's actually not too bad. He also had 3 touchdowns as well. Now, Ernest Gary had 32 receptions for 613 and 7 touchdowns. Mayberry obviously was out there on a couple screens, but also got a couple out in the flat as well, 331 and 2 touchdowns. Gabriel, unfortunately, was injured for about 7 games this season, so he only ended up with 222 touchdowns. Definitely had some high hopes for him, but hopefully next season he'll kind of bounce back. Obviously, Sweat got a couple of screens, and then Hutchinson and Keon White also got a couple of receptions as well. Obviously not as many as they got in the first season, but definitely showed a lot of utility. But this defense was honestly lights out, man. They were absolutely fantastic. I mean, Aaron Donald with 19 TFLs and 13 sacks, absolutely insane. Dexter Lawrence had 13 TFLs, and then Micah Parsons and Jalen Carter each had 10, along with a lot of other guys that had a couple as well. In terms of sacks, like I said, Aaron Donald had 13, definitely close to the league leaders. But Dexter Lawrence did have 5.5 along with Max Crosby as well. Micah Parsons, Jalen Carter with 4.5. But even Bosa had 3. DeMarcus Lawrence had 2, and then Garrett and Stroud both had 1 as well. Now, in terms of interceptions, a lot better than what we had last season. Donovan Sims had 5. Granted, he had 5 kind of going into, I think week 12. So, wish he could have gotten a couple more, but still, 5 is really good on the season. McLean, Houston, both had 2, and then Lawrence and Benford each had 1 as well. And those did happen in really big games as well. Now, in terms of fumbles too, man, Marcus Lawrence with 2 forced fumbles, absolutely incredible. 4 other forced fumbles as well. But in terms of fumble recoveries, we did have 4 as well. So again, our defense did really, really well. No block kicks, unfortunately, but hey, you know what? There's always this season. Now, looking into the offseason, free agency, and of course the draft as well, we are going to have to fill a couple positions. We are going to end up trading a couple of our bigger players, and for a couple reasons as well. First of all, I really do want to get the salary cap down because, again, we ended up kind of taking that completely off because we wanted to get all linemen on the team for that first season. So I kind of want to get back to what's normal, and plus I kind of want to see a new team next year. You know, we have a lot of really great players, don't get me wrong, but honestly, being able to kind of revamp the team and change things up is going to be extremely exciting. So I think we have a couple players that I know we want to be able to, I guess, kind of trade off and get rid of, just because I feel like there's going to be really good value there for draft picks, as well as being able to, I guess, kind of clear the books as well. And with that in mind as well, we're going to advance to free agency. We might actually see if we can get a couple of pretty good players at certain positions that we excel at, and maybe we can actually unload a couple of those other players too. That way we can get some more draft picks and also be able to have another good player at that position. You know, maybe a little minor downgrade. It won't be huge, but might be enough. So looking to the free agents that are available, obviously, again, because of the rules that we put forth for this series specifically, we can only look at offensive and defensive linemen. So any guard, tackle, center, and then of course the right, left end, as well as defensive tackle. So again, our player pool here is going to be a little limited. I do see Wyatt Teller there kind of at the top, one of the top 100 as well. 89 overall right now, right guard, but obviously not a lot of interest. So if I'm being honest with you, really, we're missing a left tackle. And even though Garrett Bowles isn't necessarily interested in our team, I feel like we're going to have to kind of go after him. I think that's going to be nice. We have a couple players that I know will actually be able to kind of fill in. And even though he is kind of going up there in age too, I still think it's going to be a pretty good signing for us if we can end up getting him. That way, again, we can let go of one of our other offensive linemen and actually be able to obviously save a little bit of money on our cap and also have another good offensive lineman. And again, even though I said that Wyatt Teller wouldn't really be interested in us, neither is Brandon Scherff. But in all honesty, he's going to be a much cheaper option than Wyatt Teller. And again, it really only just will be for about a year. It's definitely going to be about 8 million, 7-8 million less than what Wyatt would have been. But again, I think this is going to be a good 1 year rental until we can get another player in the draft. And on the defensive side of the ball, there's only really one player that I'm looking at, and that is Kenny Clark. Again, someone who doesn't have a lot of interest in our team, but at the same time, it's going to be 18 million. That's going to be a good amount of money, but in all honesty, we're going to be getting rid of, I think, Max Crosby, and this will be a really good fill-in while also saving a little bit of money too. I'm really hoping that, like, with the players that we have and the ones that we can end up getting in the draft, that we can end up developing them a little bit and they can actually take the place of the linemen that we had at the start of this franchise. But time will only tell, but for now, again, having players there that are just minor downgrades to what we have while also saving money, I think is going to be really beneficial. So we do have some bad news. Unfortunately, Wyatt Teller and Kenny Clark both ended up going to the Panthers. However, the one good thing is we ended up getting Brandon Scherff as well as Garrett Bowles, which means that our line is going to be a little bit stronger and we can actually let go of a couple guys too. So with all four of the guys that we're kind of targeting, all either picking us or a different team, I think we can actually kind of continue to sim forward. Let's get through free agency. Let's actually trade the players that we really want to trade to be able to get better draft picks, and let's kind of move on from there. And the other thing we could actually do too is trade some of our better offensive linemen or defensive linemen to another team to get some draft picks and maybe, again, just a minor downgrade at that position as well. So looking at players that we're going to be getting rid of, unfortunately, I love Joe Thuney, but he only has 1 year left on his contract. That is a huge cap hit, and honestly, I think that Quentin Nelson can really fill in at left guard for him instead. So we're going to be trading him. So looking at some of the offers, I mean, there are a lot of these that we can't take, only because, again, we can only trade for offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and draft picks too. So we're going to be able to kind of narrow this down a little bit too. I will say though, I actually kind of like what the Kansas City Chiefs are offering us, only because, hey man, they're throwing 2 draft picks in there as well as 1 really good receiver. We're going to put all the off the field stuff kind of out of our mind right now. But that's really good to see, which means that it looks like they might actually want to make a deal. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get Rashee Rice out of there, and let's see if we can actually steal another draft pick from them. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be the first round pick, but let's see if we can get a second round pick out of them too. And it looks like that actually worked. So we get 3 additional picks this season. And I know some people might be sitting at home looking at this being like, dude, you just traded Thuney for just 3 draft picks this season. But in all honesty, again, those 3 players are going to make a really big difference, and we already have someone really great at left guard as well. Now, the next player we're looking to trade is actually going to be Jason Kelce. I really hate to do that because I love the man, but unfortunately, we do already have a great center as well, so I think we can actually unload him here. And I love the Bears, so let's see if we can actually kind of fleece him here a little bit. So I'm actually going to see if I can get a second round and maybe a 5th round out of this. Obviously not their earlier 5th round, but let's see if we can get a later 5th round, and let's see what they say to that. And it looks like they accepted it. Probably went a little light on that. I should have asked for a lot more, but we get another 2nd round, another 5th round. Maybe we could have asked for one in 2026, but you know what? Again, clears the books a little bit. Now next we're actually going to be looking at Zach Martin. Probably one of our better players on this team, but in all honesty, again, only 1 year left on his contract. And again, he's getting up there in age and someone who I think that we could actually get a lot for here too. Plus we have Lindstrom kind of backing him up, which means he's going to be able to get into the starting role. And again, we're going to have a really great offensive line. The Niners are willing to give us a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round this year. So maybe we could actually get rid of the corner and maybe add another draft pick, or get rid of the 3rd and see if we can take their 1st. I'm actually considering that. But also a couple other ones too that might be pretty interesting. So again, no real shortage of good options here. I'm actually going to see if I can work with the Niners here. Let's see if we can actually remove him. I'm actually, again, going to remove the 3rd, and I want to see if I can grab their 1st round. That's only a 30. It's only pick 32. I forgot they won the Super Bowl. Maybe I can see if I can get all of them. Let's see what they say to that. I would doubt it, but it's worth a shot. Well, that's good for us, but then it makes me remember that, hey, you know what? The Super Bowl champions are getting a superstar right guard, essentially. But at the same time, we get a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in this year's draft. And that's really incredible for us. we're going to have a plethora of picks and just a whole bunch of new players, but let's hope that a lot of them end up working out. So in continuing our fire sale, I think we're actually going to get rid of Quentin Williams. I mean, he's still got 3 years left on his contract. He's at 97 overall. He's really, really incredible. But in all honesty, Dexter Lawrence was the one that really took most of the snaps at D-tackle. So we'll get rid of Williams. We're going to be okay with that. And let's see what we can get for him because, again, despite the fact that I feel like we may have fleeced a couple of the other teams out of a bunch of draft picks, again, we got rid of a couple of good players, so maybe we got fleeced ourselves. So let's see what we can do to get a really, really extravagant package out of this one. And looking at some of these deals, I think the Patriots actually have a really interesting one here. The only thing is, I feel like I maybe can get more. And since they didn't want to do that, I think we're actually going to look towards the New York Giants. Now, again, they have a middle linebacker there. We can take them out, but they're offering a lot of draft picks here. So what we can try to do, let's get him out of there. Let's keep that pick in there too. Let's see if maybe we can take one of their draft picks, which would be the 8th overall if we take their first round pick. Let's see what they end up saying to that. They end up accepting it. So we got a first round, which is the 8th overall, a 3rd, 6th, 7th round, as well as a 7th round in next year's draft for Quentin Williams. Someone who is a great player, don't get me wrong, but someone that we really weren't using, and we're going to get a lot of players out of this one. And last but not least, and I really hate to do this because I like Max Crosby a lot, but we have 2 years left of control on him. He is a 99 overall, but I think we can get rid of him considering the fact that we do have Nick Bosa over there as well. So let's put him up there. Let's see what we can get for him. And this might actually be one where we can get a really good lineman from another team too, because it looks like the Chargers are willing to give us Rashawn Slater, as well as the 3rd round pick this year, a 7th in 2026, and a 5th in 2027. We are going to counter, because I am not looking ahead to 2026 or 2027. At that point, the new Madden and at least the college football game are going to be out. So let's not think about that. Let's just make sure that next year is the season that we try to win it all. So here's what I think we're going to try to do. We're going to try to get that 2nd and 3rd round pick from them. I know that's a lot and might be a high asking point for them, but I think it's going to be worth a shot. And they ended up accepting it. I'll be honest with you, I did try with the 1st round pick and the 3rd round pick, but they did not accept that. So the fact that they took the 2nd and the 3rd actually makes me happy. We're going to have a bunch of picks in the first couple rounds. So obviously we haven't necessarily created a lot of holes on our offense and defense. However, it really is our depth that took a hit during this offseason. That's going to be a little rough, but again, we have a ton of draft picks this season. So we're going to be able to fill this roster out, quite a bit here. We're going to even take a couple of players that are going to be on the offensive and defensive line just to be able to have them for the next season if something happens, and hopefully we can actually make a pretty good team here. So let's get to the draft and let's see who we can get. All right, welcome to draft night, guys. Now, due to all those trades that we just ended up making, we have 25 draft picks. Now, chances are we're not going to be drafting 25 guys, but hopefully if we get to a point in the draft where we have a guy that is pretty much going to be the next one off the board, we can always trade up, give up a couple of our assets this draft to be able to end up picking that guy. Because 25 is a lot of picks, and who knows if we really need to fill 25 spots. But we do have a ton of needs here because obviously, as you see on the side there, quarterback, receiver, and tight end are pretty important right now. And of course, receiver and tight end are probably going to be one of the priorities, along with potentially free safety and maybe cornerback as well. So those are going to be the ones that we look to fill first. In all honesty, though, looking at the quarterbacks, really there's only one in the top 4. But based on everything that we've scouted here, it looks like he's only around 3-4 talent. And kind of like what we had last season, we ended up trading up to get Frank Forbes, but even though he's a top 5 projection, he definitely wasn't a top 5 talent. I think he was around 1 or 2 talent, so we really don't want to use a high draft pick on a guy that might be worse than what we have. We might actually wait a bit, actually pick one up down the line. That way it's one that can actually compete with Forbes, and then maybe we can look ahead to the next season to see if we can get a quarterback then as well. But as long as we get someone to really compete with Frank, that'd be great. But again, there might be better players on the board that we can pick before taking a quarterback. So it's going to be the thought process here. So with all that in mind, let's get into this draft. Let's see if we can find our next superstar here. Now, it does look like the Patriots are first on the clock, and I will end up letting them pick. I hope that they don't end up taking the receiver that I was looking at, but if they do, I know they have like 2 other good receivers that are in like the top 10 that I think we can end up taking as well. And it looks like the Patriots ended up going the route of an offensive lineman, going with right tackle Greg Goldstein from Oregon State. Now, question is, do the Bears go the same direction? They do not. They end up going for the receiver, and that is the one that we're actually looking to take. Jesus Hernandez. He looked like a really great player here, and that is extremely unfortunate. But again, couple other receivers that we can look to. Looks like the next one won't come off the board for a couple picks, so I'm going to simulate ahead. Maybe we can get a little more bang for our buck. That way we don't give up a ton of assets to be able to move up a little bit. But let's see what we do. Let's advance. Looks like the Commanders end up going with an outside linebacker, Sean Gray from Michigan State. So next, looking at the Arizona Cardinals, and looks like they're taking a right outside linebacker, Desmond McCune. Couple offensive picks followed by a couple defensive picks. Now, question is, where did the Saints end up going on this one? I think we're going to skip ahead, see what they end up picking. It looks like they take left tackle Jonathan McElroy from Boise State. Another offensive lineman off the board, but now it looks like we're coming to the Los Angeles Rams, who I know have been, at least in this simulation, struggling at receiver lately. Looks like they traded away a couple guys, so they might be looking to end up getting a receiver here. So let's see if we can make a deal. Hate to say we're going to have to go up a little bit higher in the 3rd round, which is the 78th pick, and I think that'll get the deal done. And that is. But hopefully that'll pay off, and we can actually take our wide receiver here, Damian Roth. Actually, it looks like he's going to be pretty good too. Before we end up selecting him, just take a look at this right here. So he was not fully scouted, but taking a look at some of these, man, having a catching and a deep route running at A is extremely nice. Same with the medium route at A as well. Got a B release, and that's really good as well. So he's a really good route runner here. Definitely a couple things that can be improved upon, but at the same time, someone that I think could be a really great player for us. So let's end up taking him. And as we see right there, 6'1", 215 out of Iowa State, hidden development trait, acceleration of 94, agility and 90. Looks like he's going to be a good player for us. 89 speed. Hopefully can improve a little bit on that speed. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but fingers crossed. But hey, as long as he can run routes really well and actually catch the ball, he's going to be a really great receiver for us, and I'm really excited to see how he develops. So we do have one more pick before we are back on the clock, and I think I know what we're going to end up doing depending on what the Jets end up doing. So looks like they end up going for a left tackle, Quincy Jennings from Texas Tech. Now, I think we're going to end up using our 8th pick here. Main reason for that is because even though I said that free safety and tight end were going to be some really big priority positions, I think we have a strong safety here that is going to be extremely difficult to pass up. Now, if we look, there are actually 2 right here, right in a row as well. We got John Tuck and Russell Dawson. 2 really great players, but honestly, looking at John Tuck, it is so tough to pass this guy up, man. First of all, looking at his combine results, dude, finish in the top 5 in everything, including number 1 in the 40-yard dash on the college pro day, which is nice. But looking at his other skills too, man, an A awareness, you can't teach that. A hit power, A man coverage, B play recognition. This guy's an absolute monster. We can work on his own coverage if we really need to, but honestly, he's going to be a really incredible player for us, and I'm super excited to take him right here. And as we expected, of course, him going in the top 10 of the draft, hidden development trait right there. 91 speed, not too bad for a strong safety, huh? He is only 5'10", so maybe not the tallest one, but honestly, with his hit power, pretty decent strength right there, the speed, and again, his awareness that we mentioned earlier, and another great player to have out there with Max Houston. So we have plenty of time until our next pick. We don't pick until the last pick of this round, so we're going to see a bunch of guys come off the board here, including a defensive tackle, Ben Hutchins. Nicholas Clinton, left end from FAU. Steelers end up picking a right end, Chris Reese, which means that a lot of the guys that we're looking at are actually potentially still going to end up being on the board here. But the Browns end up going with the receiver, Chris Ankrum, who is another guy that we're looking at. But honestly, the one that we ended up choosing, I think, is going to be the right call. Wow, and the Titans waste no time in taking another receiver, Chadarius Clancy. Honestly, I was looking at one of the top 3 receivers and not him, so I don't know much about him, but I'm sure if we end up seeing the Titans at any point during the season, we'll see what that guy can do. Now, the Panthers end up going strong safety Russell Dawson. And now that I'm seeing some defensive players, especially defensive backs coming off the board, I'm a little worried that the free safety that we really wanted to look at might end up getting taken. So let's advance a couple picks. Let's end up seeing Montre Lacey, another receiver from USC, coming off the board to the Raiders. And let's hope that the free safety ends up dropping to us. If not, we might have to trade up a little bit. So Quincy Cowan, the quarterback that we mentioned earlier, that was a top 5 projection, that was really like a round 3-4 talent, ends up going to the Lions, and who knows if he's going to end up becoming their new franchise quarterback. Next, the Colts end up taking left end Nolan Andrews. The Ravens end up taking right tackle Aaron Dansby. Now, the Bucs are on the clock next. I know they need some defensive players, so hopefully they don't take someone in the secondary. They did, but they did not take the free safety, and that is Britton Beal, coming off the board from Boise State. Strong safety. Not going to lie, sweating a little bit after that one, but the Vikings end up taking a defensive tackle, Alani Simpson. I don't think the Eagles are going to take a free safety on this one either, so I feel safe doing that. But they do take a defensive back in Alonzo Henley. Now, as much as I would like to actually trade up and get this pick to get our free safety, this is the pick that we traded away, and I do not want to give the Rams more draft capital, so we're going to trust that they don't go with a free safety on this one, and they don't. And it's a good thing that we ended up going with the receiver that we went with, because it looks like that might have been who they ended up going with that 6th pick. But DeMar Lindsley, now off the board, and now we look at the Chargers. And they do end up going with the left tackle, and that makes me happy because I did not want to trade them like anything for any of their draft capital. So let's look to the Chiefs here. I don't think that they're going to be taking a defensive player. They end up taking a right tackle, Zach Shepard from South Carolina. So let's see what the Packers end up doing at pick number 25. They end up going with a right tackle, Demarius Benedict from Georgia. Now let's look at the Cowboys here. I don't think that they're going to be taking a defensive back. So let's go forward as they take Thomas Perryman, halfback out of Florida State. He's going to be an absolute monster. I was actually kind of looking at him as a potential backup for Mayberry, and man, he actually looked like he was going to be good. But again, didn't want to waste a really early draft pick on something that we already had. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope that they don't end up... Well, that's what I get for waiting an extra pick, as the Jaguars end up taking Telvin Pittman, free safety from Clemson, who was the one that I was looking at, so we're going to have to go with a backup plan. Now again, we did actually have to look for a cornerback as well, and I know that corners are actually up on the board right now too, so let's advance and let's hope that one falls to us. As a right guard, Nathan Silverman goes to the Bengals, but unfortunately there he goes to the Seahawks. Darrell Walford, unfortunately, is the one we're going to take, but now we have to wait 2 picks, and depending on who ends up coming off the board next, we might either go corner or free safety. Next is a strong safety, Lance Sheffield. And the Dolphins end up going halfback Joe Barker, which means that we have an important decision to make here. Do we end up going free safety Moses Spencer, who actually looks pretty decent here? 6 foot 206, fastest free safety there on College Pro Day. Definitely tops in pretty much everything except for the broad jump, and looking at his skills too. A to C in the awareness. Man coverage, leaves a bit to be desired, but that hit power is pretty good. Tackle obviously as well, and like we saw before, the speed is good too. Or do we go with cornerback Deacon Duncan? Now, I will say the good thing about him is, man, he's the tops in pretty much everything except for speed. 20th cornerback in the 40-yard dash, just under a 4.5. So that's going to be something that's going to be lacking. But, I mean, a lot of this other stuff, man, is actually really good. But in all honesty, we do have a really great cornerback in Sims. We don't have a great free safety. So I think we are going to have to look to Moses Spencer here to be our draft pick. And he has a hidden development trait that's fantastic. Hopefully he can actually develop pretty quickly too, because a 91 speed, 88 acceleration is fantastic. That strength needs to definitely go up, especially if he's going to lay some real hits on some people. But honestly, a great building block to have in the secondary, especially alongside Max Houston. So very eventful round 1 as we ended up picking up wide receiver Damian Roth, strong safety John Tuck, and free safety Moses Spencer. 3 great building blocks for this year, and ones that I think are going to make a really big contribution on the first day. Now, we do have a couple picks here in the second round, but not until pick 14 for our first one. A lot of guys I'm sure are going to come off the board that we're going to look for, but let's see who is going to be on the board once we actually get there. So let's skip ahead. Let's see that the Patriots end up taking halfback Grant Ginn. Wonder if any relation to Ted. Either way, though, it's going to be a really big pickup for them. We're actually going to go a little bit faster. We won't go over every single draft pick that everyone does, after this round. Don't worry, we'll just go to ours, but just kind of want to see who ends up coming off the board here. Slade Ellis, right guard from LSU, goes to the Bears. The Commanders end up taking David Rucker, running back. Tavon Hart, left end, goes to the Cardinals. The Eagles end up taking Austin Mathis, defensive tackle. The Rams end up taking Jerry Hutchins, left tackle. A lot of offensive linemen coming off the board. Next, we got the Jets, who end up taking strong safety James Smith. I'm glad we got our strong safety when we did. Then the Giants end up taking right guard James Stringer. The Texans take cornerback Andrew Finch. Only a couple more now as the Falcons take defensive tackle Trey Burgess. Right tackle Larry Edwards goes off to the Steelers. The Browns end up taking Jared Austin, center from Oregon. And then one more pick before us, and that is going to be the Titans, who end up taking cornerback Deacon Duncan. I was hoping that he was going to stay on the board for us, but unfortunately that is not the case. And there are a lot of really good guys on the board here too. Part of me actually wants to take wide receiver Devontae Gary just because it would be nice to actually have Ernest Gary's brother on the team. Imagine having brother wideouts on the same team. Be a great storyline too. However, we also do see cornerback Sidney Chancellor, as well as strong safety Greg McLean. However, I do think that we've already gotten a really great strong safety, so I don't think we need another one. So I think we're going to look to cornerback or to receiver here. Now, if I'm being smart, going cornerback. If I want this story, we go Devontae Gary. And we're going to end up playing it smart, and we end up going cornerback Sidney Chancellor, who unfortunately is only normal development, man. But look at that speed, dude. 95 with a 91 acceleration. That's great. Strength is definitely a bit low at 61. Looking at his skills, though, honestly, that awareness between A and a C, we'll see once we get into the season. Catching at B, hit power at C, not too bad. Same with the tackle, which actually ain't too bad for a corner. Zone coverage is at a B. Man coverage is between a B and a D. I wish we could have actually seen exactly what he was all about, but someone who will actually play really well opposite of Sims. So we can wait pretty patiently. We only have like 7 more picks to go before we end up going and drafting again. But we have Josh Payne, right tackle from Ohio State, going to the Raiders. The Lions taking John Ali. Colts taking Jabari Rowe. I'm surprised they didn't end up going for Gary. Maybe he'll actually still be on the board when we actually look. The Ravens end up taking left tackle Robert Yankee. Awesome name. Bucks end up taking Jerry Rudolph, defensive tackle. Let's see what the Vikings do. Tight end Matt Haynes. That's a little rough for us because we do need a tight end as well. And the Eagles end up taking a strong safety, which means looks like we're going to be able to get our cornerback and our story. Because if I'm not mistaken, there's Devontae Gary up on the board still. We do need another receiver. We'll just have to cross him off the board for the rest of the draft. But hey, you know what? Let's end up taking the brother of Ernest Gary, Devontae Gary, right here. Now, don't get me wrong. His stuff doesn't look fantastic. Not incredibly fast or incredibly agile, but decent awareness, really good break tackle, great spectacular catch. Not exactly the best route runner, but if he can catch the ball in pretty spectacularly, especially if we have a quarterback that doesn't necessarily throw well and won't necessarily throw to his hands, maybe he'll make those really awesome catches. So Devontae Gary, come join your brother and welcome to the team. But unlike his brother, he is a hidden development trait and a 90 speed, 87 acceleration. I'm really excited to see how he ends up developing, and let's see if the brothers can really become a really dynamic duo in the receiving corps. And would you look at that? We only have one more pick until we get to go again. And it looks like the Rams are going to be taking left outside linebacker Anthony Alford. So, let's see who we got on the board here. Because again, we do have a few things that we still need to end up filling right here. There are a lot of really good guys here. Unfortunately though, we don't need another receiver, don't need another free safety. Again, I think we're pretty good on D tackles and ends and everything as well. We can always go another cornerback, but not too sold on Dennis Smith here. Another option here is scrambler Kenny Lennon, who actually looks like he could be pretty good. I mean, all of his accuracy and under pressure and everything is just at a B. But look at these results at the Combine and the Pro Day. Honestly, first or second in everything at the Combine. Only picked up third in the 3-cone drill at the Pro Day. But man, this guy actually looks like he'd be pretty good. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a strong quarterback class, but honestly, if we're going to end up picking one, this might be the one that we take. Now, it does look like there are a couple other tight ends on the board, so we might be able to end up taking one that is more of like either a possession one or someone who can run block, because he looks like he could be a really good blocker. So maybe Greg Foote is the one that we actually target there. So I think we're actually going to go for the quarterback here. Didn't think we were going to be taking one this early, but here we go. Kenny Lennon, welcome to the team, friend. Just like Frank, he is a normal development, but the fact that he is more of a scrambler and has some speed means that I might actually go with him if we, don't really want to pass the ball and we just kind of want to run more of an option. So Kenny Lennon, congratulations. Welcome to the team. You are not going to be the starter, but good luck competing for it. And now we got a couple more picks, and then we're going to be taking the last pick of the second round as well. So let's advance and see a right end come off the board, as well as a receiver, Calvin Thomas, going over to the Cowboys. The Jags end up taking D-tackle Jarrell Booth. Lance Davenport, right end, comes off the board. Middle linebacker Jeff Peel goes over to Seattle. The Bills end up taking defensive tackle Jonathan Wilbur, and now it's just the Dolphins before us who end up taking left guard Marco Drayton. So let's look at our board here. Let's see who we can pick, because again, we have another tight end still on the board, and that is Christian Strickland. Again, someone that I don't think we're going to be taking, because there are still a lot of guys on here that I think are very viable options. Again, Christian Strickland is still there. Obviously, it's only been like 8 picks, so of course he's still there. And there are a lot of cornerbacks here as well. I think we're going to hold off on tight end because, again, I think I know the one that we want, and we'll wait a little bit. I think he's going to stay on the board for a bit. But we have a lot of cornerbacks here that we can end up taking. But I remember earlier in the season, one of our scouts said to look out for this one cornerback, so I think we can end up taking him here. I think we can take the flyer. Devin Gaddis, come on down, my friend, and welcome. You are our next San Diego Bison. And another hidden development too. Obviously, since we have so many picks in the first couple rounds, obviously we have a ton of hidden developments, but it's still nice to get those, man. And there is another one, quarterback Devin Gaddis. I am super excited to see what he turns into. He might actually be better than Sidney Chancellor, but we'll definitely see once we see everyone's overall when we get to him. But for now, like I said, after the first 2 rounds, we're actually going to kind of just simulate up to our picks. So you guys saw what the first 2 rounds were like. Now we're just going to be seeing ours. So let's skip ahead to our next pick. Now at this point, I'm really just going to draft for our need. Despite the fact that he is around 3-4 projection, we're in the 3rd round. So hey, you know what? Meets the projection, right? Either way, it doesn't really matter. There are a couple other tight ends that are higher up on the board, but honestly, I would like to have a tight end that can not only catch, but also run block as well. And I think this guy can definitely do it too. He looks like he's pretty damn strong, man. Top tight end in bench press, 26 reps. Obviously that 3-cone drill, so he's actually got some pretty good agility as well. And I think it's someone who could actually fill in opposite of Tremaine Jefferson. He was a really great receiving tight end, and so to have one that can actually block as well too would be nice. So Greg Foote, welcome. Now, not incredible, obviously normal development, 83 speed, 88 acceleration, so he's got some pretty decent speed, especially for a tight end. That strength at 78 is great. That means that he could actually be a pretty good blocker. So let's hope this 6'6 tight end from UCLA is going to be a big benefit to us. But who knows, maybe one of those receiving tight ends could actually fall to us too, so that could be a big possibility. I think I found the perfect guy to do so. 6'5", 248 out of Oklahoma, Jeff Levy. I know he's a little bit further down the board, don't get me wrong, but that run block at A, and the fact that he's a pretty good route runner as well, is really awesome. And the fact that he is the fastest tight end out there as well, that's really awesome. Could be a really great vertical threat, especially opposite the tight end that we just ended up drafting, Greg Foote. So let's see what happens. Let's end up drafting him. And boy, we got another hidden development trait. And man, 86 speed for a tight end, that's really awesome. And again, one that's a pretty good run blocker as well is going to be great because we do run the ball a lot. But when he needs to break out, a great vertical threat. Question is, which tight ends are we going to be starting? And surprisingly enough, we get the next pick as well. Isn't that awesome? And we've obviously filled a lot of the holes that we have on this team, but we can always get a couple extra guys in each position, right? So let's look to cornerback here. And honestly, a lot of good guys up here. But I see Brandon Rhodes actually has pretty good man and zone coverage, and someone that I think could actually fill in pretty well for us. Doesn't necessarily have the best combine results, don't get me wrong. The speed is pretty marginal too. But honestly, someone who could actually play really good man coverage and potentially zone coverage as well. So let's end up drafting him, and Brandon Rhodes, congratulations, welcome to the team. Although, my friend, you are pretty weak. And with the last pick of the 3rd round, I'm throwing a little curveball at you guys. I'm not going with someone in the secondary or even someone on offense. We're going left outside linebacker Brian McLeod out of Auburn. Now, main reason for this is because we don't have a ton of depth at linebacker now. Because, again, we've gotten rid of a couple of our guys, which means that we're going to have to start getting a couple guys out of the draft to replace the ones that we've ended up losing. This guy actually looks pretty decent, too. I'm looking at his combine results. Absolutely looks fantastic. But not just that. Look at that. A to C awareness. Play recognition of B, which is fantastic for someone who's really going to kind of be out there in coverage too. Because again, a lot of the things that we suffered with last season were linebackers that weren't able to cover the tight ends. And this guy, I think, could actually do that for us. A in zone coverage, and an A to a C in man coverage as well. So someone that I think is going to be really good and someone that can fill in at linebacker for us as well. And another hidden development trait too, go figure. So as we fast forward about an entire round and a half, we are now into the 4th round and almost at the end of it as well. We have 2 picks in the 4th round as the 27th and the 32nd pick. So let's see who is left now because a lot of guys have come off the board. So another position that I know we've already drafted a couple out of, we can always look to wide receiver. You know, we did not have a big receiver room coming into the season. So adding a couple pure receivers would actually be pretty nice. And none better here than Taylor Pollard out of Iowa. 6'5", 226, needs to work on his catching and deep route running, but a B release ain't too bad, and everything else actually looks pretty decent. And again, it's not like he's going to be our first receiver that we're looking to insert into our offense. He is the 3rd one that we're taking in this draft, so let's take a flyer on him. And oh my gosh, he has a hidden development trait too. How many are we going to get in this draft? So with the last pick of the 4th round, I think we're going to take a flyer here on a halfback. So let's go with Luke Thomas here, and let's see if he can be a really good backup to both Sweat and Mayberry. Don't get me wrong, his ball carrier vision is an F, but again, he'll probably be a 3rd string to start off, but who knows? He might develop into something really good. So as we skip ahead here into the 5th round, we have picks 18 and 22 in this round right now. So here's what we're going to end up doing. I think we're going to use these next couple picks to actually kind of, I guess, fill out more of our secondary, our free safeties and strong safeties specifically, because, again, you know what? We picked one of each this draft, and even though we already have a couple really good guys back there right now, it's not bad to end up giving them a little bit of competition. So Martin Cherry, let's see what you can do right here. You actually look like you'd be pretty good. 86 speed, 91 acceleration, normal development, which is not great, but not bad. But honestly, a guy who I think could actually be a really good fill-in down the line. So with pick 22, we're actually going to look to strong safety because, again, that's going to be a really important position as well. We already have 2 guys that I think are going to be really great ones for us, but again, never bad to have a little bit of depth. And I'm deciding between Terrell Daly and Quentin Page. Now, it'd be nice to have the run support strong safety, but honestly, a hybrid is never bad. But again, neither of them necessarily fit our scheme. But honestly, this guy looks like he could be pretty decent. Not necessarily the fastest, though. He is 5th on the pro day, but still, that's not a great time, especially for a strong safety. But still, C awareness, but D in the zone coverage, and a C to an F in man coverage. Might not necessarily be the best one for us, but Quentin Page, on the other hand, let me tell you, man, this guy actually looks like he could be pretty good. Got some pretty solid speed, too. A whole 1/10 of a second faster. Zone coverage is B to a D, which ain't bad, but we know that his man coverage is a D. Not great, but again, you know what? He's someone who's just going to be more of like a depth piece. So we skip ahead a couple picks, and now we're back on the clock. And at this point, the only things that we really need are just kickers and punters, and we'll get that in the 7th round, because I don't know if anyone else is going to come off the board with that. But honestly, to this one, we're actually going to look to something that, again, we already have pretty steadily, but not bad to bolster the depth to it, and that's going to be right outside linebacker, and Anthony Moore, who not only fits our scheme, but actually looks like he could be a pretty good linebacker as well. I mean, his finesse could be a little bit better, but hell, a C power ain't too bad. The pursuit and tackle being a C, but that zone coverage ain't bad either. And again, we've had some pretty big issues with linebackers actually defending the pass, so having one that's good with zone coverage, I think would be good for us. And this linebacker is actually a hidden development trait too. Pretty slow at 80, but you know what? For a pure right outside linebacker, we will take that all day. So at this point, we still have 7 picks. And, yeah, I don't think we really need to fill much of anything else again, except for just kicker and punter. So I'm actually going to trade away this one, and let's see if we can actually get some future assets with this one. And honestly, I kind of like this deal from the Jets. I mean, we'll be getting a 5th and a 7th rounder next year, which again could be assets to trade up again, or even just picks for us next year. And I think that's going to be good to be able to get a little extra capital next year as well. Now, I know I said that I really didn't want to take anyone else because we don't really have many needs. Feel like, you know what, we got a right outside linebacker and a left. Let's go for the middle as well. And now we have a couple guys that we can actually pick here. Now, a couple guys who are potential undrafted free agents, but Juan Abbott really does kind of fit into our scheme here. But it's kind of hard to pass up a guy like Nicholas Wilkinson here. And the reason why I say that, look, I get it. His pursuit is an F, that block shedding is between a C and an F. But honestly, this dude actually has some pretty good awareness. It's at a B, his tackling is at a C, same with the play recognition. The pursuit can definitely improve, but you know what? Again, it's a late round draft pick. I think this kid could be really good and someone who can definitely work behind our linebackers. Holy cow, and this guy's a hidden development trait too. Go figure, let's go. So at this point now, we're only picking in the 7th round. But since we're not really getting much else, I think what we're gonna end up doing is taking our kicker, our punter, and then let's just take 2 flyers on some random guys, right? And when it comes to kickers, gotta go with one with absolutely no awareness whatsoever, and that's Jesse Archer here. F for awareness, but honestly, that accuracy is at a B, and that is actually better than what we have right now. So hopefully he can actually come in and be a lot better than our kicker this past year. Got a 91 kick power, which is really good, and again, with some pretty decent accuracy as well, so maybe he might be a little bit better. And as for punters, now question is, what do I value more, awareness or injury? Based on the amount of injuries that we had last season, I'm actually going to go with George Northcutt here. Again, the main reason for that is because that injury is at a B, but honestly, I think he can be a really good punter. Not that it matters, but number 1 in everything, baby. And my goodness, he's actually a hidden development trait too. Add another one to the list. And that actually leaves us with the next pick too. So when it comes to taking flyers, let's look for a fullback. We haven't had a proper fullback this entire franchise, so let's actually draft one here, and why not Jamal Dyson? Now this guy could actually be a monster for us because, dude, even though he only has a D for awareness, he's actually got a pretty good run block and a pretty good pass block and a lead block as well. And since we do end up running a lot, especially with the lead blocker, that could be really good. So Jamal Dyson, welcome to the Bison. You are one of us. So if you guys made it this far, thank you so much, because I know this has been a lot for me too. But here we go. We have one last pick, and honestly, I think we need to spend it on a cornerback because that is definitely our weakest position coming into the draft, and so why not give us as much depth as possible? And I think Juan Broyles over here from Michigan State could be a really good option here. Again, we're kind of picking from the bottom of the barrel at this point, but again, Juan Broyles actually looks like he's pretty good, got some pretty decent speed, and also has some pretty good catching and press coverage. A for tackling, which is something you'd really love out of a cornerback, and hopefully he can definitely up his coverage both in man and zone. But either way, Juan Broyles, welcome to this cornerback room, buddy. So we finally get a chance to look at the overalls of our draft picks, and man, some of them look really good. I mean, Damian Roth, our first pick in this draft, which was the 6th overall pick, 79 overall wide receiver. He is going to be really good for us, and will probably end up filling in as our wide receiver number 2. John Tuck, strong safety, 76 overall. Moses Spencer, 74 overall. And then when you get into our 2nd round picks, my goodness, man, Sidney Chancellor is a lot better than I thought he was going to be. Ended up being a 77 overall to start, which is really great, especially for a normal development. Devontae Gary, Ernest Gary's brother, comes in at a 70 overall, might actually be placed above his brother. Kenny Lennon, our new backup quarterback, 70 overall, which ain't going to be bad. He'll definitely end up competing with Forbes for the starting spot, but again, it'll depend on what kind of offense we want to run. Devin Gaddis, the one that we were told to kind of look at before the draft, ends up becoming a 72 overall, which is great. Now, I told you I had a really good feeling about Greg Foote here, man. 74 overall, which is great. That's higher than Tremaine Jefferson when he ended up coming in last year as a rookie, so that's going to be really great right off the bat. Our next tight end, Jeff Levy, was only a 65 overall, but hey, you know what? Again, good depth piece right there. Brandon Rhodes, cornerback, 71 overall. Brian McLeod, the left outside linebacker, at a 71 overall. Unfortunately, Taylor Pollard only came in at a 67. Luke Thomas only at a 64, but of course now we're getting into like the later rounds. But Martin Cherry, free safety, 65. Same with our strong safety, Quentin Page. Anthony Moore, right outside linebacker, ended up being only a 62 overall. Goodness. Nicholas Wilkinson, middle linebacker, 64. Jesse Archer, our kicker, is actually a 67. He might actually become our starter, and Northcutt just slots right in as our starting punter, and actually to 70 overall, which is insane. Now, our 2 last guys that we end up picking up, obviously the fullback, Jamal Dyson, had a 66 overall, and Juan Broyles, cornerback, at a 66. But looking at these guys, man, anywhere from 79 to 62. But man, a lot of these guys that we got early in the draft are amazing. Again, I had a really good feeling about Greg Foote, and man, did that really pay off right there. Obviously, we'll go through the offseason and everything, but when we pick up in the next video, it's going to be week 1 of season 3, and hopefully we can get a really great showing out of a lot of these rookies in that first week. Not sure who we're going to be playing, but look forward to next week to finding out. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in week 1 next season.